Hey, welcome to Get Growing, a short encouragement to help you pursue God's best in your life. We've been talking about how God transforms our character when we allow His Spirit to guide our lives. And today we get to talk about how God develops patience in us. Patience. Now, my guess is that many of us would say, I could definitely use some more patience. But here's the tricky thing about patience. The only way to truly grow in it is to experience things that require it. And that's hard. So instead of doing that, many of us, we just decide we're going to tell people, hey, I'm just not a patient person. And we'll rather do that than actually try to improve our character. We think of patience the way that venture capitalist Guy Kawasaki describes it. He said, patience is the art of concealing your impatience. So instead of developing patience, we just fake it till we make it. But the thing is, that's not the kind of patience that God wants to develop in you. When the Bible talks about true patience, it's not a virtue that stands alone. You can't have true patience if you don't have endurance. You can't really be patient if you don't have humility. You can't really be patient if you don't want to have a generous life, to give of yourself. And so to develop true patience and not just conceal our impatience, that requires surrendering to God's will in those situations where we feel impatient. So here's an exercise for this week. Every time that you feel impatient, whether it's with a family member or a coworker or a friend, ask God to show you what surrendering to Him in that situation looks like. And so the Apostle Paul, he wrote in Philippians chapter 2 that our attitude should model the attitude of Jesus, that He was humble and He considered others as better than Himself. And so that's something that is too hard for us to do on our own because it's just not natural. It's not our first inclination. It's not the way that we humanly want to respond. So we need to ask God to help us to have His perspective, the perspective of Jesus, and that comes through God's Spirit. And as we ask God to give us humility towards others, what we'll find is that patience follows it. And so if you ask yourself, what am I being impatient with? You realize that you're being actually impatient with God because there's something that's out of your control that's not going the way that you want it to go. That could be anything from the line at the grocery store to getting a new job or getting a promotion or finding a spouse, any of those things. Ask God how to surrender that situation, that thing to Him. Because here's the thing. You can't have patience in your life if you're in a power struggle with God. It just doesn't work. And so we need to believe what God said through the Apostle Paul in Romans chapter 8. He said that in all things, God works for the good of those who love Him, who've been called according to His purpose. And God is working for your good, but it's on His timeline. And we need to accept that. So when we feel impatient with our circumstances, we feel impatient with God, the root cause of that is a lack of faith, a lack of trust that He's actually working for our good. And so what we need to do is we need to call it what it is. It's unbelief, and then ask God to help us to truly trust Him. And so that's the challenge. Don't pursue patience as the art of concealing your impatience. Deal with the root of your impatience. And when you dig down to the root of your impatience, you're probably going to find at the core it's selfishness or pride or fear. And if that's the case, the remedy is going to be humility, generosity, and trust. It's not going to be putting on a better acting job. And the reward for surrendering to God is going to be true patience, which is assurance and endurance in the face of discomfort. And that's what God wants to create in us. So let's cooperate with Him so He can do that, so He can really make us patient people. All right? We'll see you next week.